meeting. Mr. Chasson got it in first, second by Mr. Dumas. All in favor? Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Item number 5 is the chairman's comments, and I'm not going to reiterate what I just said 10 minutes ago. Item number 6, a public hearing to amend the Ascension Parish Development Code for recommendation for the approval or denial to the Ascension Parish Council of 6A zoning review ID PZ 2736.21s, lots 2, 3, and 4 of Magnolia Lane subdivision for Jody Ducote, located on the east side of Magnolia Estates, approximately 350 feet north of Perkins Road, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to light industrial. Is Mr. Ducote or his representatives here? Yes, sir. You don't have to call me your honor. There are some honors in here, but I'm not one of them.
As a preliminary matter, I noted today the online application for review wasn't a complete application, and I'm not sure if y'all got the complete one or not. I did make copies. It's a couple of the exhibits that weren't attached that are pictures. I could hold them up, but I do have copies if
There's an Elmo there if you want to, we can activate that.
I didn't put them on there. I'm Jeff Pertini, and this is Mr. Jody Ducote, and we're here to request Mr. Jody Ducote's property as discussed, lots 2, 3, and 4 in Magnolia Estates, to be rezoned from residential, which one of them is a current non-conforming residential within a light industrial use, to permanent status as light industrial. Mr. Ducote came to us, and we're here to kind of work through the zoning ordinances and the code and try to figure out what the best fit was zoning-wise to get this property in the historical context it's always been to meet the expectations. Now, the written narrative and application has a very detailed historical aspect of the property, when it became commercial in the 80s, the timing it became commercial prior to, we know there's a lot of opposition from the behind subdivision, Greenbrier Estates. These properties were commercial when the estates were developed, and it's historically been commercial. And when the comprehensive zoning code came out, it deemed it residential, which made it inconsistent with the covenant of Magnolia Estates filed in the mortgage records that deems this property and multiple others to always be commercial. And the reality is the request for rezone is mainly twofold. First, the property was bought with the commercial intent, and it's to preserve the commercial integrity of the property. Second is the residential and the non-conforming use is affected and can affect and is affecting Mr. Ducote's business, Superior Ironworks. The non-conforming use when the zoning code came in was not to penalize or cause harm to businesses that were operating in areas that now became residential. And the fact is, it did. Now that it's deemed residential or non-conforming, there's no ability to borrow money like many business owners may do. There's three-phase power, which allows for the type of work Mr. Ducote does, light fabrication. It assists and makes it a little easier to work. Deliveries, and that was one of the pictures, is with lots 2 and 3 and the inability to use them for anything, deliveries have to come on Magnolia Estates. The truck has to stop, reduces it to 1 lane, and it's got to get lifted over the fence, and then the truck's got to go into the neighborhood and turn around. By giving it the permanent light industrial status, it allows the property to be used for the deliveries, so it alleviates traffic. Now, the recommendation by the zoning department was to deny the request, and I was a little surprised, and I looked into it, and there were 2 reasons given, and that's what we really wanted to address tonight, to show that the reasons are inconsistent with the actual facts, and to provide reasons that it actually should be rezoned. The reasons were the master plan reflects the area as residential. The second reason, and I'm going to quote it, or part of it, was the permitted uses that could be allowed under the light industrial change from residential. So the master plan, it's a macro document. It's a plan. It doesn't go in and identify each parcel of property as residential, will allow a car wash here, will allow a little business here. It's a residential nature, and it's deemed residential. But clearly, driving by the area, there is a lot of business there. And it's a medium-intensity residential district. And according to the Comprehensive Zoning Code, what that says, and what it means is it's designed to be next to, adjacent to, high-intensity traffic and property, like Perkins Road, which is the front street in front of the subdivisions, like the mixed-use zone of the property directly in front of Lot 2 on the map. The infrastructure in these medium intensity is designed for more intense development than a light one. Medium intensity contemplates, and it necessarily contemplates, some kind of industrial, commercial industry in it. The light industrial is designed as one of the least intrusive zoning requests. We had previously submitted for mixed use, largely because Lot 1 is a mixed use. And when the recommendation was other possible uses, we gave it some thought and decided that light industrial is the proper one, because that's the operating business today, and that's the historical nature of these properties. So the light industrial, the purpose of that is to expand the economic base without encroaching on residences. And that's what it does here because of the historical nature of this land always being commercial back into the 80s. Any ordinance, and it's a statutory requirement, and the Ascension Parish ordinance and every other ordinance is designed in accordance with the statutes to conserve values of buildings and encourage the most appropriate use of the land. And so when we look at the most appropriate use of this land, we have to look at the fact is this is not a little residential pocket. These have been businesses in the surrounding area for many years. And this is just a blow-up of one of the exhibits. I didn't realize y'all had the Elmo. But we can look at Superior Ironworks, which is right here. And from Mr. Ducote's front door, he can walk 450 feet. And he can do it 9 different times and go to a different business. And if we look at all these businesses, the properties in question are 1, 2, and 3. There's only 2 lots in this whole area, including across the street, Perkins, that are not light industrial businesses. It's right here, which are 2 of the issues, 2 of the properties before the zoning committee today. So the reality is this is, and always has been, and always will be, a small pocket of commercial activity that the Magnolia Estates subdivision approves of. It's in a recorded covenant. So while the master plan may say residential, the reality is residential medium intensity is meant to couple with light industrial, which are the 2 historic uses of both Magnolia Estates area and these lots, and as developed when Greenbrier Estates was developed. Now, the second request to deny was the other possible permitted uses. And that's a really interesting analysis, and that's obviously the correct analysis to determine whether or not to allow a rezone. So it's not what it is today, 2 empty lots and a business. It's what it could be if we grant it. Now, the good thing is we have precedent on Lot 1 for this very area. And what we're looking at here is this red, which is also an exhibit, is Lot 1. Lot 2 and 3 are before the commission today, and Lot 4 is where Superior Ironworks is, which is before the commission today. All 4 lots back up to Greenbrier Estates. All 4 are across from businesses in Magnolia Estates. And so that's the context. The red area denotes a mixed-use designation. So around 2015, it was proposed and agreed that Lot 1 would be a mixed-use permanent designation. And that's what it is right now. It contains a law office. It contains a car wash or a pet wash. It's got 1 driveway for both businesses, no buffer behind it. That shares a property line with Lot 2. So when the analysis was made for Lot 1, the question had to be the same. What about the possible uses? In a mixed use, and it's not what it is now, it's what it could be, because who knows in 20 years who's going to own it, or 40 or 60. So at that specific location, mixed use, it could have been a hospital, a bar, adult entertainment, a large church, a recycling center, laundromat, motel, hotel, pawn shop. The list goes on the allowable mixed uses. So when Lot 1 became mixed use, everything in that area, especially the one that shares the property line, says what's acceptable here, and all of those things are acceptable there. Certainly, the light industrial, which allows none of that, is far less intrusive and shares a property line on Lot 2, allows the light industrial to maintain the historical nature of it. Once that became mixed use, it really took away any potential residential value it could possibly have. There's no buffer. There could be a bar there one day. Who's going to build a house behind that? But when it was determined that these are all okay right here, it also necessarily has to determine that a less intrusive light industrial would be perfect right there. That can be a small office. That's Mr. Ducote's light fabrication shop. That's the kind of businesses that have been there. Light industrial will not allow the things that are allowed in mixed use. Now, the question still begs is, what could be there? Well, there's a further analysis because for vacant land, which is especially Lot 2, is empty, and Lot 3 is a building that's vacant that could be used as a small office. There's required through the planning department an extensive list of conditions and requirements, like planning review and multitude of other items that are required for any structure to be built on the vacant land. I think it's the Ordinance Zoning District Uniform Development Code 17/2017. It's 3.5 pages of requirements that must gain approval to develop the land up. So for those two lots, we're looking at undeveloped land that need further approval to become anything more than a parking lot or a driveway or a storage yard. And that's the specific purpose Mr. Ducote stated he wanted to use this for. So if he wants to do anything with it, he's got to get more approval. If he wants to use it to help his business, it can be light industrial now, and there's no difference to anyone else. It's a status quo, except it's allowed to be used. For Lot 4, it gives that permanent status that it's been for 30 years to allow him to operate his business and deal with the things that he doesn't necessarily have, like three-phase power or the ability to deliver. When I look at the reasons for the rejection, and you couple that with the standards that must be met, we don't understand the potential use reason for rejection, especially when Lot 2, which shares a property line, can be anything in a mixed-use designation. So moving today, the stated purpose in the narrative for the redesign was commercial value, ability to use it as his business. And that's precisely what this allows by moving these to light industrial. And it's the historical nature of that property. On the flip side, we understand the opposition, but we're maintaining the status quo. And the zoning ordinance and the requirements are going to stand for anyone and everyone. If someone wants to buy the property, and if he sells it one day, it's business. People give offers, people consider offers. It is what it is. They're going to have to be within the light industrial. They can't put up a hospital there. If they want to build up, they're going to have to go through all of these A through G requirements, which can be denied. So at present, the light industrial does nothing more than give permanent status to the building, which has historically been that way, and provides the ability for him to use the property as a business and maintain his commercial interest in it and not make it a worthless residential property behind the car wash and law office. What it doesn't do is allow unfettered access and ability to develop this into multiple businesses or anything bigger without review and coming before the Planning Commission to get that done. And for those reasons, we disagree with the recommendation of the department to reject the zoning requirement. This is really a status quo issue that is a legal determination to put this where it's always been, which will allow him to use it as he's always used it, with no fear and no worry about what could go there without coming before the board and having prior review. If there are any concerns or questions, we always know everybody sees things different. We'd love to address them. Mr. Ducote is very open to get this done to make further concessions if needed. Originally, this was put in as mixed use, and he was willing to say, none of these, none of these, none of these. We looked, and light industrial was the proper zoning for it, which is less intrusive, so we tried to be reasonable. But if there are other concerns of a smokestack, and that happens to be allowed, assuming it's not something within his business, I'm sure he'd agree to that. A further stipulation which is allowed within zoning changes. We're here to make everybody happy with it. And we know there's opposition, but we don't understand the technical fact-based aspect of the review, that this is a reasonable request and there's really not a valid reason to not grant it. Are there any questions, comments?
We're gonna open a public hearing on this to hear from the people. I'll just say this before we do that. We're not making a final decision tonight. Whatever we do is a recommendation to the council, and they can go along or not go along. It's ultimately the parish council makes this decision. We just hear it and make our recommendation one way or the other.
Yes.
So,
Correct.
all right, with that, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this. Mr. Maka, is anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, I have Mr. Alan Robert.
All right, and I would ask all of you, please, we do have a 3-minute time limit on the comments, so please try to adhere to that. Mr. Robert? good
Yes,
to
my
see
name
you.
is Alan Robert. I'm a lifelong resident of the Parish of Ascension. And first, hopefully without taking into my 3 minutes, I want to congratulate you, Matt, and your committee for this committee for all the hard work you've done over the years. Wish you well in the future. And my first job as a lawyer 46 years ago in this parish was working for his grandfather, the former Judge Glenn A. Long. And I appreciate that opportunity. And it's been a long haul.
Thank you, thank you.
Let me say,
Hold on, let me start your time here. Okay, you should be on.
yes, and I think I know most everybody here. I've lived on Greenbrier Avenue since 1989. That's 33 years. My backyard borders Lot 2 through 4. This entire area is residential, with the exception of a few businesses on Old Perkins. There's no industry in this area at all. I have the greatest neighbors in the world, and we ask to preserve our neighborhood and say no to this zoning change, which could result in 3 industrial businesses being located in that particular area. The application for Mr. Cody has certain errors and misstatements in it. Let me try to go through some of those. When Mr. Ducote bought lots 2 and 3, he knew they were residential. He fenced in one half of lot 3 with lot 4, which didn't change the zoning, and he moved a double-wide residential trailer onto lots 2 and 3, which is still there. So he knew it was residential when he bought it, and he moved a residence onto the thing. So to say that he thought it was commercial or industrial is just not, it's ingenuous. There's never been a commercial business on lots 2 and 3 the entire 38 years that I've lived on that property. From his filing, he says that the ordinance went into effect in 2003, and he didn't start his business till 2013. So he's been in non-compliance since 2013. So for 9 years, he's broken the zoning regulations, and now he wants to be rewarded by making it into an industrial zone. It's he talks about a Hibernia Bank located there. That's incorrect. I was on the board of Hibernia National Bank for 20 years. I was also on the board for State Bank that sold to Hibernia Bank, and also on the board for Capital One Bank that Hibernia sold to. There was no branch there, there was no office there, there was no operation there, or anywhere as close. The only 3 Hibernia offices were Donaldsonville, Gonzales, and Highway 73 at Airline. They may have foreclosed on that former backyard mechanic shop that was back there before I moved there in 1989, but that's their only connection to real estate in that particular location. Lot 1, he talks about, it fronts on Old Perkins, but it's got no access to Magnolia Estates because that's a residential lot. It can't handle that commercial or industrial traffic. Let me tell you, you can't hardly get out of my subdivision right now. Trying to get to this meeting, if I had waited to make a left-hand turn to get to Gonzales, I'd still be waiting. I would have never made it on time for this meeting. Traffic is horrendous over there. There's no light at that corner, and this would just add 18-wheelers, big traffic to that area that we don't need. Also flooding, there's been no traffic or flooding studies done, and it does flood in that area every time. There's heavy rains, the ditches fill up.
Your 3 minutes is up. I gave you a few seconds to finish up, but
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robert.
All All right, I have the following. They're present. They're not in support, wish not to speak.
Okay.
I have Marilyn Lambert, not in support. Eddie Lambert, not in support. Adam Dupree, not in support. Jim Keller, not in support. And Suzanne Keller, not in support. And that is all.
No other people have signed up to speak on that?
Yeah, that's all.
All right. We'll close the public hearing on this. Staff, Mr. Brock, just a comment?
Yeah, I believe that he basically stated my recommendation, or our recommendation from staff. That was to deny the light industrial district as requested due to the permitted uses that could be allowed under the light industrial, and that the master plan reflects the property as residential neighborhood.
Is the non-conforming use of the lot on Magnolia Estates, is that a pre-existing non-conforming?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So he's okay with that?
Correct.
And it looked like all the other commercial enterprises that he showed on his map fronted onto Perkins. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's no commercial establishment that fronts onto a residential road there.
There is a car wash that has been there that's non-conforming, that is across the street from one of these
Pre-existing
lots.
non-conforming?
Pre-existing non-conforming, yes, sir.
All right. But other than those two, everything else fronts to Perkins?
Yes, sir, and they're either non-conforming or the ones that he stated earlier, that front Perkins, they're mixed use too. They're not mixed use.
Okay.
Questions or comments from the commission or motion? Mr. Scheck-Snyder, you're up first.
Mr. Brock, I see that the area in total would be 2.5 acres. Does that meet the requirements if he were to request this as a SPUD?
Yes, he would, if it's over 2 acres, he would be allowed to do that. Industrial uses are not permitted underneath a SPUD, though.
That was my question.
Mr. Dumas?
I'm familiar with this area, and I've gone out there. Mr. Ducote can continue to operate his non-conforming use. He can shut it down for a period of time, not to exceed 6 months, and he can restart it, so long as it doesn't exceed the 6 months. There's absolutely no rational reason to expand the use and rezone these other parcels of land. They're inconsistent with the master plan. We worked very, very hard on the master plan, and we identified this area to be residential, and it should remain residential. So with that, I make a motion to recommend denial to the parish council on the grounds that this rezoning is completely inconsistent with the master plan and inconsistent with the surrounding uses, and it would serve to the detriment of the general area.
I have a motion to, let me clear the record, motion by Mr. Dumas and a second.
Second, but question, do we need to give a rebuttal period? Because I know we had one kicked back to us before when we voted to deny something because we didn't give in that case it was planning, but didn't give them an opportunity to
Well, I think this is a
address
recommendation, but,
I'll second the motion, but I want to make sure we're following. We don't get kicked back on a technical.
I'll give you 3 minutes to respond if you'd like to what Mr. Robert said and to what Mr. Brock said.
Aspects with respect to businesses that front on Magnolia Estates, there are actually multiple, Mr. Ducote's across from them every day. In addition to the car wash, there is, and I believe it's Exhibit 5 on the application, which is a January 2004 overhead, which does show, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up, which does show businesses on lots 2, 3, and 4 at that time. So when the comprehensive zoning ordinance first came in, 2, 3, and 4 were all commercial. With respect to the actual businesses, these are operating businesses that front on Magnolia Estates, which is consistent with the covenant that was filed by the actual subdivision to keep these as commercial, which are the car wash here we have, that's a business, that's actually a storage in the back, that's an operating business, that's a business, that's Superior Ironworks. and then we come up, these of course front, but without a buffer there, and then this sort of has access, but, so there are the 3 across, and there were 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the covenant to be commercial. 7 of them are commercial right now and operating businesses either under mixed use or non-conforming use, and 2 are not. And what we're simply looking for, at a minimum, is to be able to use this to deliver stuff. It'll alleviate traffic, if anything, and to allow this to permanently be, which it has been since 1986, a commercial property under the non-conforming use, but it needs to be permanent because of the effect of the non-conforming on the ability to operate. He's never had any complaints. He has never been non-conforming. We don't use this now because we think it's light industrial, but the zoning department doesn't, so we don't use it to make deliveries. We're a good neighbor, and that's the main aspect here. Here, it should be industrial because it would be a single residential, and to do anything with it would require, as we discussed, all kinds of stuff. But we recommend at a minimum we'd be allowed to use this, and the protections of the light industrial will not allow anything to go up or be built or developed. It's not expanding it, it's alleviating traffic, it's alleviating issues, and it's consistent with all these other fronts of business.
Mr. Dumas?
I was just gonna say that, even if those other lots at one time may have had a commercial use on them of any type, they've long since been abandoned. They've been vacant for longer than 6 months, so there's no ability to reclaim that. And I think that's clearly stated in the code, and it doesn't change anything as far as any potential use of that property. Again, you can remain as a non-conforming use and continue to operate there, pursuant to the code, but expanding it is a problem.
Mr. Schecksteiner?
When you're talking about doing some of the expansions and you're just talking about doing turn-ins, even if it's residential, that doesn't stop you from pouring concrete and making a turn-in, does it?
Actually, I think Mr. Ducote.
I spoke to Brock about that. I own the lots, trailers and all are mine personally. The issue we have is, I'll tell you the story real quick. In 1987, when I got there, the street was at a, 4-foot lower elevation. Our driveway is at an angle, so where a truck could pull down our driveway, back down our driveway. Roughly in 2000, somewhere in that neighborhood, they raised the street elevation about 5 foot. So now when these trucks try to back in, their front tire falls off into the ditch, so they can't. So I'm forced to have to stop them on the road, unload them on the road, carry it over a fence. Now, prior to that, I think zoning and landscape probably does, I think took effect around 2000, 2001. From 87 to 2001, we didn't have those issues. Not only because of the road, just things were different. There were, to Mr. Robert's statement, there was a bank on the corner when I got there. The bank was not operating. It was a temporary drive-through bank. I thought it was Hibernian. It may have not been Hibernian Bank. There was an operating Mobley's Auto Repair for, 8, 10 years that was there. It's since closed down and I bought the property. And what he's referring to, the businesses on Magnolia Estates, there's myself, there's a car wash, there's a storage warehouse, there's K&S Transport, which they have about 15 transportation vehicles. There's a dump truck services, which houses, I think, 8 dump trucks that go in and off that street. So from my front door, you can walk 350 feet and you can visit other people that are doing commerce. Call it what you want, but that's what's there.
And Mr. Ducote, with all due respect, I completely understand that, but I'm focused on what your property is.
No,
at the moment.
I agree.
And what I'm getting at is there could potentially be things that you can do on your property as it is now that could potentially eliminate some of these issues you're talking about. For instance, you could add a culvert, come in, add extra concrete, and expand your own driveway. That would be something you could potentially do.
It's done. It's done and it's gated. I asked Brock if it would be permissible. All we want to do is be able to back a truck down there to unload it off the road. He said that currently it doesn't support that I could not use it for any business obligations. So, my personal stuff, my trailers, the stuff that belongs to me, I can park it there and do what I wish, but can't do commerce on it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries to recommend denial to the Parish Council. Item number 6B is zoning review ID PZ 2775.22, 1.34 acre lot of Ruby Ori property for Michael Frazina, located on the south side of Seabro Row, approximately 1,050 feet west of Highway 73, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium-intensity residential to mixed-use corridors. Is someone here on that? Mr. Robertson.
Good evening, Mickey Robertson, MR Engineering and Surveying, 9345 Inline Avenue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. What we have before you tonight is a piece of property that is situated between a church and a gym facility. It's currently zoned residential, and we're asking for mixed use. So staff has recommended approval. I feel like it's a more appropriate use. Everything around it is heavy industrial, so we feel like the mixed use is appropriate. Staff agrees, so we ask for your approval. Thank you.
All right. We'll open a public hearing on this. Mr. Jamaica, has anyone signed up on this one?
No one signed up.
We'll close the public hearing. Staff?
Yeah, staff recommendation is to accept the mixed-use corridor as requested based on the master vision plan.
Questions, comments, and/or motion? Got a motion to approve by Mr. Chasson? Second by Mr. Furman. And it's just recommending approval to the Parish Council. All in favor? Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item number 7 is the staff report. Mr.
No.
Brock, I know you like to sit there and speak, so.
All right, no report.
All right, item number 8, motion to adjourn.
Well, I just want to make a comment. Thank you very much for your service. You've been a great chairman. You've been an awesome inspiration for this planning commission. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Thank you all. All right. With that, meeting is adjourned.